All right. Hello, everyone, and good afternoon. Just wanted to thank you for joining here. And good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. So I have the pleasure of kicking off this session and just introducing our two key speakers today, whom are both with Nucleus Research. Isaac Gould is responsible for the overall research direction and management of the organization research team at Nucleus, which includes supply chain amongst many other things, but most importantly is also the key author of the Supply Chain Planning Value Matrix, which we're going to talk about today. And he's worked with a variety of supply chains over many years and regularly quoted in a variety of business publications, frequent speaker at industry events, and recognized as an expert in the market. Charlie Brennan, equally as part of Nucleus Research, covers the supply chain management and corporate performance as a research analyst out of Florida. Before joining Nucleus, Charlie was a practitioner in supply chain, particularly working for an operations analyst at a company called TLF Apparel down in Fort Lauderdale. We're privileged to have them both with us today, and with that, I'll introduce Isaac and get this thing going.
Thank you, Dave. Hi, everyone. So I'm Isaac Gould. I'll be starting this off with a quick introduction about Nucleus Research. We're an independent technology research firm. Our focus, I would say, is on ROI. So where a lot of tech research firms, focus a lot on the technology itself, we're really focused on what is the bottom line value that technology delivers. So we try to answer the so what question of what the technology does. Our bread and butter is the ROI case study. So that's where we dive deep with a user of a technology to help them calculate, all the costs and benefits to come out with that ROI number for them. As such, we are certified by the National Association of the State Board of Accountancy. All our calculations, fall under generally accepted accounting practices. We also deliver ROI tools. That's for sales teams and prospects to help estimate their potential ROIs for technology deployment. And we publish all our research onto our website, but also the Bloomberg terminal for, the equity and investment community. Any Bloomberg terminal subscribers out there, be sure to search Nucleus Research up. So I'll move on to why we're all here. The Supply Chain Planning Value Matrix, we published this fairly recently, just last month. It's our ranking report for the supply chain planning solutions market. This isn't the graphic yet. We'll get to that, but I just want to give a quick explanation of what we're looking at here. So we rank all of the vendors based on functionality and usability and divide them into 4 quadrants. Here, functionality refers to the features itself, the supported markets, industries, the problems that the technology is aiming to fix. And then usability, that refers to the ease of use of the solution. So that covers a couple things, right? The ease of use for day-to-day users, adoption, what are the training requirements, administration, ease of integration and implementation, as well as ongoing support services. That all falls under usability. So if we take a quick look into our quadrants, you'll see that, the core provider, that's the quadrant where we've tried to place vendors in for, if you're an entry, if this is your first time entering the supply chain planning market, right, you're coming off of Excel, this is where you'll probably be looking, right? And there's a, big focus on providing those core capabilities at a manageable price point. If you move up to the facilitators, that's where you see a lot of niche focused. So maybe, right, you're looking just at demand forecasting, or you're only focusing on inventory optimization, right? Then you'll be looking at some of the facilitators. And then if you move to the experts, that's where we kind of get into the enterprise use cases, right? Where you really need that deep functionality, your high volume, you might be doing aftermarket parts, as a complex supply chain. You'll be looking here, especially if you're in an industry that's not generally supported by, what's regularly out in the market. You might be looking for best of breed or vertically focused solutions. That's where you'll find vendors in the expert quadrant. And then we look at the leaders. Those are the ones that we consider provide the best balance between functionality and usability. They support a diverse use case. If we're talking about supply chain planning, that's where they have a comprehensive offering that covers most elements of supply chain planning, all the way from demand, supply, order management, inventory, what have you. And it also addresses the most prevalent issues in the market. So seeing what we have here, there's not necessarily the best quadrant or the worst quadrant. It's all about finding what you need, right? If we were to think about this in terms of vehicles, right? If we're looking on the right side of the graphic, we're looking at our sports cars or maybe our tractor trailers. And then on the left side, we're maybe looking at our pickup trucks or minivans, right? It all depends on what you need. If you're just taking your kids to school, you don't really need a Ferrari for that. So it's all about finding the solutions out there that meet your business case rather than trying to fit your business case to a vendor. So this is the 2023 supply chain planning value matrix. Gaines this is their first year as a leader. They were an expert last year, and we'll get into a couple reasons how they've made that jump. But I wanted to talk about some of the key trends that we've seen from our study over the past year. So in terms of the state of the market, right, I think we've all seen a tightening of the economy. We've seen that tech spend has been tightened around a lot of other aspects of technology, right? If we're looking at CRM, ERP, HCM, but where we've actually seen a pickup in adoption is in supply chain planning. I think that's a lot of that has to deal with supply chain issues being vital for businesses to succeed today, right? We're dealing with labor shortages. We're dealing with fluctuating demand. We're dealing with fluctuating commodity pricing or supply shortages and inconsistencies in lead times. So supply chain agility and resilience has become an important topic for, I would say, pretty much all asset-centric businesses. And as such, we've also seen a pickup in SMB adoption, right? So if we're looking at companies, anywhere from, around 100 million to, I would say, just under $1 billion, we've seen a lot of pickup in the supply chain planning adoption there for the technology. And I would say that a large part has to do with cloud, right? Cloud has been lowering the cost and entry barrier to technology adoption all around. Integrations are easier on the cloud. Pre-built connectors are certainly cutting down those implementation times. And as a lot of these vendors, have matured, they've been around for, a good 20 plus years, their mid-market offerings are maturing. And as such, the implementation costs and the partners that they've have improved as well. So one way that a lot of vendors are addressing this SMB adoption is by providing a modular architecture. I think gone are the days of big bang implementations. Vendors want to be able to address people's pain points early, without being tied up in a long-tailed implementation process. And that's been very attractive to a lot of those mid-market customers that I've been talking about. And another way that vendors are focusing is in integrated business planning, right? So IBP, it goes by other names, might be sales and operational planning, sales inventory and operational planning. Essentially, we're trying to bring in different parts of the company that haven't been in these supply chain conversations. It's important to bring in sales data. It's important to bring in marketing data. It's important to bring in your workforce data for all the reasons that we've just talked about. So organizations are really trying to be able to harmonize all this data as well as provide an environment for collaboration between these different departments. So being able to share your supply chain plans with the marketing team and vice versa, being able to incorporate sales and marketing data into your demand forecasts. That's been a key focus. And, I think that you've seen that, a lot of it has been support for M&A as well. I'm not sure if some of the viewers have seen this, but coming out of the pandemic, right, there's definitely been a consolidation in the market, and supply chain planning solutions have been a key support for this, right? If you need visibility into, you just picked up a manufacturing location, you need to view their production schedules, you need to view what their procurement has been. So a lot of companies have been adopting supply chain planning solutions to consolidate the data from a lot of their subsidiaries. And this has been helpful, especially for in the planning section. If you're doing procurement, if you have a lot of subsidiaries, you now increased your bargaining power. being able to do bulk orders for your entire company. So that's another area that we've seen supply chain planning become very vital. And of course, back to Gaines, right? We've seen that they've made this enhancement with their newest release, Gaines X. So talking to the Gaines customers, we've seen that they've delivered quite a few UI enhancements, specifically around analytics and reporting. And based on that usability jump, Gaines has made their first-year entry into the Leaders Quadrant. So congratulations to them. I won't go into, I don't want to steal Charlie's thunder. Charlie spoke with a lot of Gaines customers and was able to put together a report. So I'll turn it over to him. But just before we do that, I just wanted to make another point about our value matrix is that everything here in terms of the rankings is informed by customer conversations, right? Our key focus being on the bottom line value. We have to speak with customers. So these rankings with functionality and usability isn't just about the technology. It's been about how customers are telling us they've been able to extract value from the functionality and usability of their systems. With that said, I'll turn it over to Charlie now, and he'll be going into a little bit about what we've seen coming from Gaines customers over the past year.
Hey, thank you, Isaac. So the team and I, during the supply chain planning value matrix process, spoke to multiple customers that have deployed Gaines systems for three common factors. First, its inventory optimization functionality. Second, its ability to enhance operational visibility. And third, its forecasting functionality. So when we first look at the inventory optimization functionality, Gaines offers customers a multi-echelon inventory optimization model. This helps companies monitor demand plans, service levels, and lead times for every SKU, regardless of location across the entire company. This helps stakeholders kind of identify patterns and trends in demand to avoid obstacles like stockouts, overstocking, excess stock, and also generating suboptimal service levels, which is something companies deploy these softwares for to decrease. And Nucleus also found that organizations utilize Gaines stocking policy inventory optimization feature as well, and this helps determine performance metrics at the item level. And what helps companies do is it helps kind of achieve that at the service commitments, improve sales forecasting, and the marketing strategies around specific SKUs that may be more high performing than others. So companies can then align their marketing strategies around certain products to increase that profitability. As we move on here, so its ability to enhance operational visibility. What Gaines does best is that it consolidates disparate data silos onto a singular platform. And what this does is create a single source of truth for all users to operate on throughout the entire organization. And this will provide greater visibility and access to accurate data for aspects such as inventory allocation, the sourcing of materials and supplies, your demand sales reporting as well. The main thing is they're kind of driving that data-informed decision-making, which is very crucial in the forecasting and supply chain planning field just in general. And through our end-user conversations, Nucleus has noted that on average, companies that do leverage Gaines systems can decrease their reporting times by an average of 65 to 80%, which is very significant. And then we transform into the forecasting capabilities. And what I've seen specifically is that companies often choose Gaines systems because its ability for demand pattern recognition, demand sensing, and machine learning functionality. What this does is it automatically detects inventory discrepancies at the SKU level, which will allow an organization to create more accurate forecasts and adhere to service commitments and increase revenue streams. With the multi-echelon modeling feature on Gaines systems, companies can also create granular demand plans that base forecasts off things like demand history, point of sales data, fleet usage, and sales and operational data, which will help improve supply chain management, customer satisfaction, reduce inventory carrying costs, and automate a lot of those processes as well. Now, when we first looked at some of our customers, we talked to a lot of customers in manufacturing, consumer goods space. The first customer we spoke to was a supplier of fluid systems and components. It employs roughly 1,500 individuals, generates $550 million revenue annually. Their legacy system did not provide planning and forecasting functionality for its multiple warehouses, and as the company continued to scale, the legacy system couldn't help it. And what the first thing they did was that they implemented the Gains multi-echelon inventory optimization feature, which helped them gain that inventory visibility, which helped them reduce the lead times, develop optimal replenishment processes, and also identify excess or dead stock, which helped them reduce $21 million of excess inventory, or as they said, it was 15% of their carrying costs just in total. We transition into this U.S. retailer. This company is a little bit smaller company, employs 100 individuals, generates $20 million of revenue. And with this, the problem this organization dealt with prior to Gain Systems is that its legacy system only performed sales forecasting and did not do any, it could not perform any demand planning for functionality. And this caused the organization to be blind to a lot of inventory aspects of and marketing promotions as well. And it lacked the flexibility to roll up data from multiple distribution centers. And so once they deployed Gains, it allowed them to kind of capture that sales growth, view inventory trends, and gather insights into inventory turns to kind of improve that decision making. And they also used Gains to gain that operational visibility, consolidate data silos onto that single platform to get that single source of truth for all users to operate on. Like I said, to improve that, to drive data-informed decision making, to make the whole operation more efficient. And as we transition into the last customer, I would say probably the biggest one is the U.S. utility service provider with 150 store locations. They currently have 5,000 suppliers, 1,500 SKUs, and they generate around $3 billion in revenue annually. So after evaluating the market, they chose between the last two was Gain Systems and SAP, and they ultimately chose Gain Systems for its ability to adjust forecasts, optimize costs, and incorporate lead times for inventory and scheduling. And this helped increase operational productivity throughout the entire organization, and as well as decreasing operating costs and specific scenario models too. Q&A. That's all I have in mind there.
All right, so it looks like we're, from a presentation perspective of the Nucleus Research team, wrapping up here, and wanted to open up to any questions that might be available through the team. As you know, you can type these in through the WebEx portal itself, or I actually have one question that's come in already that we'll go ahead and ask in this. Here, we'll just, I think there's see a couple coming in. All right, so let's start off with Isaac. One of the questions that you were asked here is what trends that you think will occur and continue throughout the current year and into 2024.
Sure. Do you mind if we go back to the trend slide that I had up with the graphic? Perfect. Right. So I think some of the things that I think will continue on into through the year as well as 2024 is a big focus on integrated business planning. Speaking with a lot of customers throughout the year, both small and large, this has been a key focus for them in implementing some of these initiatives. The main reason being is that a lot of the unforeseen demand fluctuations, a lot of the times that's self-inflicted, right? That's when sales or marketing is not necessarily speaking with their supply chain teams, and they might launch a promotion, they might launch a new marketing campaign, and that has caused demand fluctuations that the supply chain is, struggling to catch up with. So the idea behind, increasing some of these integrated business planning initiatives is providing, organizations with a framework for collaboration. I've seen, in the past where integrated business planning is maybe done once a year. Companies are now trying to cut that down, to, maybe doing that twice a year or even, per quarter. And I've seen even some companies doing it on a continual basis, on month per month, having regular check-ins from all departments. So by increasing that collaboration, right, it's giving sales the opportunity to let the supply chain teams know, we might see a pickup as we're going to be discounting this product heavily. Marketing team can come back saying we're going to launch a new campaign around one of these, product groups. So just be prepared for that. And as you can have these conversations, months in advance, that gives your inventory managers, your production team a lot more lead time into preparing for that. So I think that's been a big area of pickup. Some other trends is the increased, SMB adoption. I've, gone through a couple of reasons why mid-market businesses have been able to enter the supply chain planning market that was traditionally reserved for the enterprise. So that's only going to speed up as technology becomes more accessible. I think one of the big reasons SMBs are struggling right now is because, demand fluctuations are killing them. It's when they have to then reach back out to procurement team, back to their suppliers. They aren't having the same of bargaining power as maybe some of their enterprise suppliers right now. More focused on, especially as the economy tightens, more focused on providing some of those big bulk deals, some of their bigger clients. So supply chain planning solutions have given some of these mid-market companies a lot more visibility into the future. So they've been able to negotiate with their suppliers a lot earlier on, and that has certainly saved them a lot of headache and cash. So those are some of the key trends that I see continuing, right? We've seen that as the market tightens, spending is certainly tightening as well. That can both mean on the technology side and also on, organizations' customers. So by being able to manage your supply chain planning, you're able to plan for your working capital a lot better. I think protecting your cash flow, protecting your cash positions is certainly a big reason a lot of companies have been adopting supply chain planning solutions in the first place, right? Being able to manage your inventory costs, being able to lower your holding inventory while still maintaining those service levels has been crucial to maintain being competitive, right? As both B2B and B2C customers are a lot more demanding. On time and full delivery rates, the demand around that has certainly been a lot higher over the last couple of years. So how are companies still able to hit those service levels while being able to cut costs, while being able to protect their working capital? And that all starts with in your planning first. You need that visibility ahead of time.
Yeah, Isaac, to confirm, I mean, we're obviously, as a vendor to serve this market, we're seeing the pressures of the economy, but we're also seeing those same exact pressures translate into conversations that we want to have with customers. So, that's a good follow-on to a second question that's come in, and I don't know if this is for Charlie or for Isaac or for both of you. There's a lot of vendors out here. What sorts of companies are best suited for gains in this case? And I think the premise of that is how do I navigate the noise of I don't know how many vendors are on this page.
Sure. Yeah, sure. I can handle that one. So from what I've seen that customers that typically pick gains are very inventory intensive organizations that have very complex distribution models that need to be taken care of as companies scale. That's a big thing. A lot of companies, why they migrate off of legacy systems, they aren't supporting an organization as they are scaling in size. And I think another thing that separates gains a lot is that it's designed to fit the needs of all businesses, regardless of size, from tier one down to those small businesses, ones that I've spoken to, generating those $10, $20 million, all the way up to $4 billion and plus. And they offers the same technology, service, and support for each of those organizations. So that is probably the big thing I've seen is what drives a company to deploy gains is that its ability to help any company of any size, and those who are very inventory dominant and need that type of optimization there.
Appreciate that. So as of right now, I don't see any further questions in the portal. If anyone on the phone or anyone in the session has a question, we'll pause a minute. We'll give an opportunity to add that in. And if not, here we'll look to close this session down in just a moment. I'll give it one more minute. It's going to be an uncomfortable minute for the rest of us as we stand here and look. So, all right. So far, nothing coming in, and it doesn't look like anyone's typing. So, with that, I'd like to thank the Nucleus team. We appreciate the opportunity to have worked with you throughout this process in all candor. I said this at the beginning to the team. I learned a little bit about some of my own customers through this exercise. So it was very beneficial to understand the value that's being created through our customers. While we try to do that on a regular basis and talk to them all the time, often enough, it gets into feature functions and less about what actually matters. So thank you for helping us anchor on what actually matters, which is outcomes in the business. Greatly appreciate both of your time here today. And for the attendees, this wraps up the session. A quick reminder that this session will be available via recording. You will see a link via email at the end of this that you can access the session with. And if there's follow-on questions that you have after the fact, please feel free to reach out to myself or other team members, and we'll be glad to follow up with you. Thank you for joining us today, and have a great afternoon.